go. We do have a very elaborative session, and this session is going to be perfect for anybody who wants to build a career in Azure in his very beginner or is at a beginner stage in that particular journey. The timer hit zero, and we are live with our brand new session on how to step into Azure Cloud to get paid higher. Welcome, everybody. For all the people who are joining us for the very first time, thank you very much for joining with us. It's, you know, it's a privilege for us, and we are quite blessed to have you guys here as well. And especially if I can contribute in any way whatsoever to your, the future successful career in the cloud. So guys, this particular session is about Microsoft Azure. We do have a lot of different sessions happening all over as well in the future as well. So make sure you are following K21 Academy on all the different social media platforms. As for the people who have introduced yourself, thank you very much. I see a lot of you guys are joining us from all over the world, and joining us from a very variety of different job roles. We've got network engineers here as well. We've got MDM administrators. We've got production support analysts. We've got people who are already currently working in the Azure but wants to explore more. So everybody, welcome again. If you guys have any questions already, if you already have any questions, please do feel free to put them down in the chat window. We've got a very incredible session and an expert trainer that I'm pretty sure that you all will love and would enjoy learning from him. So let's first have a look at the itinerary of the topics that we'll be covering today. So first, from starters, we're going to look at why should you be learning Azure Cloud. Then we'll be moving on Azure certification roadmap for cloud engineers and architects. Then we'll be looking at Azure global architecture, in which we'll be covering geography, region, and AZ. After that, we'll be covering multi-tier HA web app service plan, app security. And then we also have a live demo in which we'll be looking at web application and app service plan. Then we also will be looking at Azure Solutions Architect Expert Certification, both the certification exam as well as what is the most efficient way for you to learn all the topics and prepare for the certification exam. Then we will also be looking at the hands-on labs that you must perform to become a Microsoft Azure Solutions Architect expert. But again, guys, this is something that a lot of you guys who have done a little bit of research on this particular topic would know, but some of you might not actually know about it. The certification exam itself consists of both theory and practical. So while you're preparing for the certification exam, you need to prepare for the practical side of it as well. But in the end, we will be covering about career, job opportunities, and the market trends involving the Microsoft Azure, Microsoft Azure Solutions Architect in that space. Okay, moving on. So let me introduce our expert trainer for the evening. He's got multiple years of experience in the field of Azure and got multiple amount of certifications as well. He's a global Azure technical trainer and Microsoft certified trainer. He's got 10 plus years of experience in the IT, a passionate trainer with 4 plus years of training experience. And let me tell you, all the students that we have got at K21 Academy who have attempted, who are his own students, the classes that he takes, all of them absolutely love him. I'm going to share a few reviews with you at the later part of the session as well. And I'm pretty sure by the time he'll be done with the technical part, a lot of you guys would agree with those reviews yourself as well. Then is also my Azure Administrator, Solutions Architect, Security, DevOps, SAP on Azure. All of these topics, he has done multiple certifications on them. And there's obviously the Microsoft Azure certification on that. He's a people person, passionate in helping people to meet their career goals. This particular session, in fact, was created by multiple inputs by him as to what are the things that are being relevant or that are currently relevant in the industry as well. So you'll see a lot of different things that you might not actually see on the generalized webinars and workshops that you see, because the people that are at times teaching them might not be currently working in the industry, but he himself is also working in the industry directly as well with real time clients as well. Now, guys, a lot of you guys have already answered this for me, but I want each and every one of you to answer this right now. Number one, whether are you a beginner, are you an intermediate, or are you an expert? Because am I audible? I just got a message on the chat window that I am not audible. Am I audible, guys? Can you please confirm that? I must be audible, actually. Guys, can you please confirm in the chat window if I'm audible? Just say yes or no if I'm not audible. Okay, Raj, then I would suggest everybody saying that I am audible. So I would suggest you to actually, leave the webinar and join in again with the same link. Probably there are at times some connection problems and anything like that. So once you do join again, it will be smooth from there on. And if anybody anybody else is facing the same issue, please do that as well. Okay, I'm audible now. Thank you very much, Raj. So guys, please do let us know whether you are a beginner, whether you are intermediate, or you are an expert at Microsoft Azure. I see a lot of you guys are beginners, and we had expected that as well. But a lot of you guys I see now are intermediates as well. So that's something new, and we're really excited to help you guys as well. If you guys have any questions, please do put them down in the chat window. We would love to answer them, and so our trainer as well. Okay, so guys, this is something that I've been saying all throughout the particular the session we've had till now, but please make sure that you are focused throughout the session and you're asking questions, because there are going to be a lot of topics that you might not know or have not covered before as well. So if you guys are feeling like, okay, I'm stuck at one place or another, please do ask your questions so that those doubts could be answered here as well. The best we love to answer questions, and by the end we try to cover each and every one of them, by whether it's directly in the chat window or putting up directly in the live session as well. So make sure, guys, whatever doubts you have, even if you have the doubts while a technical part is going on, please do put them down in the chat window as we go. In the end, once the technical part is over, we'll pick up all the questions, and if you have any questions after we cover the career part of Microsoft Azure, you can answer those as well, and ask your questions then as well. And at the end of the entire session, we'll pick those questions directly up as well. But we've got an incredible team with me as well, and they'll be directly answering those questions in the chat window itself. So no worries on that part. Okay, now I'll be handing over the access of the webinar to our expert trainer for the evening. So sir, I have given you the access, sir.
Thank you, Shivansh. Thanks a lot. Hello, everybody. I hope you all are doing good. And am I audible to everybody? You all can hear me well and you can see my screen. Can I get a quick confirmation from everybody?
Yes, sir. Your screen is visible as well as your audible loud and clear.
Okay. All right, guys. So we are done with the introduction part, guys. Yeah. And we are here to understand the need in the market, that why we should be learning Azure. Right, cloud is one thing and Azure is one of the provider that we are going with. Right now, the thing is Initially, whenever we need to start our business requirements, right, definitely we need to create hundreds and thousands of the resources. For an example, a web application. Now, where you will be deploying a web application, probably on a server. Now, the problem is that whenever you are bringing any particular hardware on any particular server on which you are hosting a web application, you know, guys, that hardware has a life cycle. For an example, just take an example of your laptops, your servers, right? And after 5 years, every 10 years, you need to replace that particular hardware. Now, think from an organization perspective, which is running in multiple countries all across the globe, and how many resources they have to create on daily basis. Or let's say, over the years, what will be the cost if they need to replace the entire hardware? How much time consuming it will be the process? Let's say if a company need to make a site up on a particular location. Now, definitely, guys, it's a very time-consuming process. The compliance requirements, that the resources that you have created, and the physical connectivity between them, connecting one data center to the another, or let's say accomplishing the connectivity all across the regions. Now, guys, the reason is why we should be going through the cloud. That nowadays, if you see that the companies are available in abundance. Why? Because the cloud is supporting that particular business. Let's say if we need to create any sort of the resources, we don't need to wait for purchasing those data center. We can directly reach out to the provider and we can have a subscription in place and we can create our resources. Now the thing is, if that is that easy that somebody else will be taking care of the compliance and the requirements that a business demands, it will really sounds easy to set up any sort of the infrastructure as a service or a platform as a service which can meet our business needs and the demand. Or let's say hosting a web application, spinning up a databases, or let's say any respective services which we required in order to store, in order to execute, or in order to function our business over here. So that is the reason, guys, nowadays if you see from last 5 to 6 years, everybody is moving towards the clouds. There are a lot of migration projects are happening. Now, if that is so, that if every organization is leaning or moving towards the cloud business, definitely there will be more and more demands of the engineers. Because at the end of the day, who will be going to get the job done? Definitely, they will have more and more demands available in the market. So, guys, that is the reason we should learn Azure, because initially AWS was the pioneer, but the thing is, from last 4 and 5 years, if you see the amount of the growth which has been made by Azure in the market is tremendous. The reason is that Microsoft already have various customers and the clients all across the globe. So the only thing is that the Azure that needs to provide over here is some level of the discounts. And if you compare the number of the locations that the Azure data centers are available, it's highest in comparison to AWS and the GCP. And that is the reason, guys, we are concentrating on the Azure. So in front of you, what I'm just showing you, just to prove the point that why we should be learning Azure, that over the span of time, you can see this is the quarterly chart of each and every year, that amount of the growth has been registered by Azure in cloud over here. So starting with 5.5 billion in year 2015, currently the growth is now 44 billion USD over here. So you can certainly understand, guys, over the span of last 5 to 7 years, it has been exponentially increased. Now, moving on to know that what exactly we need to know. I mean, that is something that we understood that, okay, there is a high demand, but what we need to do in order to achieve the goal over here. Now, this is regarding the architecting. Now, when you talk about architecting any solutioning, for an example, a company approaches to you. Let's say I have a particular demand and I would like to host certain set of the web application. I would like to have this much of the security, and further I would like to spin up some resources, some databases, the execution of the pipelines, and many more. Now we need to understand that if we are supporting any sort of the customers or any supporting clients over here, what exactly their demands. Now if we understood the requirement, what we need to do in order to provide the service. So over here, we required an understanding that what Azure offerings available and how we can provide the best optimum solution, because here we need to take care of the performance, we need to take care of the security, we need to take care of the costing requirements as well. Now, when we talk about availability on demand, now availability on demand means that over here we are designing any of the solutioning. Now, let's say tomorrow there is a regional level outage happen. For an example, there were a few web applications we have deployed in a particular location. Let's say that location was East US, and we need to host certain set of the server and the databases. But let's say that region goes down. Now, in that particular situation, definitely you required another site to respond at that situation. So how we can go ahead and create site-to-site connectivity so that, let's say, the similar kind of a solution we have created in another location, how we can bring up those services in no time, so that the amount of the damage which is happening because of the resources not available, how you can come out from that particular situation. Now, as we know that Azure have lot many locations available. So how we can go ahead and create our disaster recovery solution? Or let's say if there is any corruption or any sort of the issues are happening in our servers. For an example, there was a problem which has been detected of a data corruption at 6 p.m. So if we have taken the backup of that particular server, let's say around 4 p.m. or let's say around 5 p.m., how we can use that particular backup in order to restore our services back to normal? Or further, let's say if you are taking an example of a long-term retention, probably we are from the analytics team. Now, definitely, if you talk about an analytics, right, it works on a historical data. I'll give you an example, guys. Nowadays, you must be seeing in the news, right? The company growth, the economy growth is happening with this particular rate. We are trying to achieve certain set of the target, and we will be able to achieve in next quarter. Let's say take an example of the sports. Let's say if there are two teams playing matches against one another, with the help of the analytics and the past occurrence that how these teams has played against one another, and on the basis of the current form of the players, you can probably predict that what will be the outcome of that particular match. Now, these are just the layman example that I have just put it across over here. Now, in the same manner, when you are working for any organization, let's say my resources has been deployed and there are 100 customers that I'm serving with a particular capacity of the database and a web application. And I need to know that with the help of, the kind of the customers and the client I'm dealing with this particular rate, what will be the amount I should ready with, or what will be the operational cost in upcoming next quarter, so that I will be able to be ready with that much of the finances, and we know that what will be the operational cost, and on the basis of that what will be the revenue of the organization. Now, this is just a practical requirements over here. So long-term retention of the data so that we can conduct those analysis. So over here, guys, here you can keep your backups, your databases, your retention for many days as well, which can help you in order to do the analytics as well. Cloud migration capabilities. Let's say today I'm running, let's say 100% of my business on the on premises. Now if I feel like that, I would like to conduct an analysis, and on the basis of that I would like to decide what all resources that I will be able to migrate to the cloud, so that I would be paying less for that resources, however I'm still getting the benefit of the cloud business. Now, what are the possible benefits? So initially I started my discussion that how much money an organization need to spend each and every 5 years or 6 years in order to replace the entire hardware, probably replacing the entire data center. Now, guys, your data center is not an economical resource. It's a very costly resource. Now, after 5 years, if you're going to make the changes, just go back a bit back in time, guys. What kind of a laptops you are using right now? And just compare with the laptops that we used to use 7 years ago or 8 years ago. Remember those laptops, guys? Dual core processors that we used to have, Core 2 Duo. We used to have 2 GB and 4 GB RAMs right now. Now, if you compare the currently hardware that you are using and the amount of the advancement has been done over the span of 8 to 7 years, that currently i5, i7 processors are available into the market. The minimum requirement of your operating system is 4 GB RAM. And initially, it was the entire size of your laptop RAM that we used to have. So you can certainly understand a pain of an organization when they are dealing with hundreds and thousands of the customers and they need to replace the entire hardware. There will be downtime with that. There will be maintenance cost. Hundreds and thousands of the employee that needs to be hired only just to maintain the infrastructure. Now think about, guys, all this headache is gone for a while. your provider is providing you the SLA that the uptime will be 99.9% or 99.95 or up to 99.99% as well. So we need to understand that how that kind of the high availability can be achieved with the help of the providers. Now, if somebody else is taking care, definitely, guys, you are saving a lot of money when it comes to your hardware and infrastructure deployment. We are directly using something, and over here, at any given point of time, if let's say the things doesn't go the way you anticipated, you can also get rid of the resources as well, which was not the case earlier on when we are using our on-premises resources. The reason being, if let's say you have purchased 5,000 servers, and let's say tomorrow you feel like that the business is not making as much profit that what we have anticipated initially, and probably you need to get rid of probably half of those servers, what you will do with those servers, guys? Definitely, guys, it's a bad investment. There will be a big impact on the organization, on the revenue, on your operational cost. But over here, all this kind of a thing with little bit of the planning, you will be able to accomplish over here. Now, you can take it as a profit or you can take it as a cost optimization. But over here, with the help of the cloud, you will be able to accomplish the similar requirement with the minimum cost requirement over here. Now, probably when you are deploying the things within the production, you may need to do the testing as well. So over here, you can also further optimize the cost for your testing environment over here as well. You can have application analytics, you can have cloud busting as well, that you can auto scale any given point of time, let's say on the basis of CPU utilization, memory utilization. Let's say there are certain servers are running, but suddenly if there are hundreds and thousands of the users are hitting on your web application, let's take an example of the Black Friday sale, or take an example of a Christmas where hundreds and thousands users will be abruptly starting purchasing any of the item on the servers. You can certainly understand how much of the traffic it is generating on the web application. Now, it is not going to be there for a longer period of the time. Probably due to the festive season, it is happening. Now, you required auto scaling over here, that suddenly your resources are capable of the scaling requirement. Now, that we call it cloud busting over here, that any given point of time, you can spin up hundreds and thousands of the resources to meet the requirement. And after that, there will be optimization. Once the number of the workload has been reduced, you can further reduce them as per the requirement over here. So further cost optimization, and your application analytics will continuously help you knowing what your application is doing and what all changes that you have to do. Because, guys, whatever you are implementing today, 2 years from now, definitely there will be certain improvement and the improvisation will be needed. Doesn't matter how good security you have implemented or how good optimization that you have done with your business. Definitely after certain time, there will be more advanced security protocols available. There will be adaptation of the technology will be needed. And that's where your cloud business will come into the picture, that how you can eventually increase your workloads and how you can enhance your security or enhance the performance. Because you may want to start the business with 100 of the customer at the moment, but 5 years from now or 2 3 years from now, definitely there will be more clients, more data. Think about an banking firm, guys, which will be increasing the customers on regular basis. Think about how much data a bank is holding from last 50 years or 100 years old bank. Now, definitely in order to meet the demand, you may require availability and on demand scaling for that. Further, guys, these are some of the Fortune 500 organization. You are probably been aware about all these companies, and all of them are on Azure at the moment. Some of the examples are your Johnson and Johnson, BMW, Walmart, who's the number one Fortune 500 company, your Toyota. Further, you can have Samsung, Honeywell, many organization, guys. You must be aware about all this just to keep your trust that why we are learning Azure over here, because these many organizations are dealing in Azure. So definitely there will be high chances if you are able to crack any sort of the interviews in near future. Definitely there will be high chances that you will be make it through these organizations, because all these are working on Azure platform. Now, Azure Global Architecture. Now, over here, we're going to talk about what exactly Azure is providing and what exactly we need to learn over here. Now, when we talk about Azure architecture, the first thing that we need to understand that what are the location Azure data centers are available and how those are helping us in order to meet our business demand. So for an example, geography, region, and availability zone. Now, availability zone is the technical terminology that we use to meet the SLA, right? So what is availability zone? We're going to see in a while over here. Now, guys, over here, you can see there is an architecture available. That is your Azure architecture, where you have fault domains and updated domain. Now, you must be thinking, what are these technical terminologies that I'm going to talk about over here? So let me explain a bit over here, guys. Now, let's say, guys, we have created a particular virtual machine in Azure, right? So what happened, let's say if we are creating a virtual machine within Azure, somewhere in Azure data center, that particular resource is getting deployed. Now, if you have seen data center somewhere near or maybe in the past, your data center have multiple hardware components, right? Which are isolated from one another. Now, these components, the technical terminologies of these components, we call it fault domain. Now, why we call it fault domain? Because over here, these are isolated within the data center in terms of your different hardware architecture over here. These are fault domains, guys. Over here, we also call it FD, fault domains. Now, how these fault domains are helping us? Now, guys, if I'm going to spin up a single machine within Azure, definitely your provider will give you some amount of the SLA. Now, when you say service level agreement, what we are talking about? We are talking about the uptime. Because let's say if we are running our data center on the on-premises, definitely we need to make the hardware changes. Similarly, your provider also need to do the hardware changes as well. Now, your provider says, which is Azure in our case, is that with a single VM, the maximum uptime that you can achieve is 99.9%. So this much of the SLA that I will be able to achieve with a single machine, but there are certain criteria that I have to fulfill in order to achieve this much of the uptime. Let's say I should be using the premium disk and the premium storage account, because guys, over here, it's not only about the uptime, it's also about the performance. So if I'm not using a premium disk, definitely I'm not entitled to get a good amount of the performance. So if you are looking for this much of the SLA, you should have premium disk and the premium storage account on which this particular virtual machine will be using that particular disk. Now the thing is, what if I need to increase the SLA? A similar example, guys. Let's say there is one employee taking care of multiple jobs in your organization. What if that employee doesn't turn up to the office? Who will be taking care of that particular task and the responsibility? So definitely, guys, in order to increase the availability, you may require more than one employee. Now, in the same manner, if you would like to increase the SLA from 99.9%, you required more than one machine. But where I should deploy that machine? So over here, in order to increase the SLA from 99.9% to 99.95%, what we can do, we can deploy more than one virtual machine in one fault domain and in another fault domain over here. And with the help of the load balancer, we can distribute the traffic among these two resources. So just in case if there will be any hardware changes or the maintenance job is happening in this particular fault domain, your another machine continues to function without any interruption over here. So that's how we increase the SLA. The further technical terminology that what we have over here is the updated domain. Now, updated domain is nothing. It's further division of your fault domain, that your fault domain are further divided into other section that we call it updated domain. Now, updated domains are nothing. That's where Microsoft make the changes. So whenever there will be one virtual machine deployed in one fault domain, so let's say I have created this fault domain vertically, and there are further section that we call it updated domain, that whenever Microsoft need to reboot any particular server for any particular maintenance job, they will target one updated domain at a time. So let's say these are your fault domain. Let's say your FD is 0, that is fault domain 0, fault domain 1, and fault domain 2. And further, you can have this updated domain over here. Now, the combination of these fault domain and updated domain, we call it availability set. Why we call it availability set? Because with the help of these combination, it actually help us improving the SLA over here, that whenever you deploy one machine in one fault domain and another machine in another fault domain and updated domain over here, definitely, guys, you will be able to increase more SLA over here. So just in case if there is any maintenance job is happening through Microsoft using the updated domain, it will only impact one server at a time and rest of them is continue to work. Now, in the similar manner, guys, let's say I further demand more SLA. I required more uptime than 99.95. This where your availability zone will come into the picture, where let's say this is your a single region where Microsoft have multiple data centers. So let's say this is zone 1, this is your availability zone 2, and this is availability zone 3. And over here, there will be not single, but multiple data centers available inside these particular zone. So instead of creating two virtual machine on a same data center in different fault domain, you can have a single virtual machine in one data center and the another virtual machine in another data center on different availability zone. So let's say this is your availability zone 1, this is your availability zone 2 that you can have, and this is your availability zone 3 that you can have over here. And by deploying multiple resources in multiple data center, definitely guys, in case there will be one data center goes down, still your servers are running in the another zone altogether. Why we call it zone? Because the power supply and the coolant supply for these zones are different from one another. So even there will be any power failure which is impacting the group of data center, the another server will continue to function without any interruption over here. And this is capable of increasing the SLA up to 99.9%. So on a practical note, guys, if you see initially with a single machine, it was 99.9%, right? So on a year, how much of the downtime we can expect? 0.1%. Now, 0.1% of a year. So let's say there are 365 days in a year. To be precise, for a single day, let's say 0.365 days of downtime. So approximately 1/3 of a day. To be precise, 8.76 hour of a downtime we are talking about with a single server. But now with the help of availability zone, where we are achieving the SLA of 99.9%. What is the downtime percentage over here? 0.01%. That will be further being reduced up to 52 to 54 minutes on an yearly basis. So you can certainly understand that how much of the high availability you can gain it for these servers. Now these servers can be used for multiple purpose. It can be used for hosting a web application, or it can be used for hosting your database as well. So over here, when we talk about this Azure architecture, where you are allowed to use availability zone, and over here, these availability zones are nothing, are available in a particular region, and Azure have multiple such kind of the region available over here. I hope, guys, this architecture makes sense to all of us. Can I get a quick confirmation from everybody, guys? Are we able to follow, all of us? Are we all on the same page, guys? Yeah? Okay, guys. Now, let's say, guys, this is regarding the architecture, right? We just talked about the architecture, how the data center architecture looks like. And just in case, guys, if you like to see how many locations that Azure data centers are available, just mention your Azure regions over here. And the moment you will say Azure regions, hit enter, just click on the images and you will have your pictures available over here. And in this particular picture, you will be able to see that you have multiple location available. And on this particular location, guys, over here, you have worldwide location available, where available regions. So all these are available region, guys. Announce region that soon Microsoft data center will be coming into the picture. So guys, this picture is slightly old. Currently, UAE North and UAE Central are in function over here, and this Norway West. So currently there are 60 plus region, guys, over here. And we have availability zones. So these dots are showing where availability zones are available, where you can go for 99.99% of the SLA over here. So these are the location, guys, where you can feel free to deploy your resources to meet your business demand. So if you are in any part of the world, you can run your business from anywhere over here, because data centers are available. Feel free to create your resources. Now your Azure Architecture Center. Now over here, guys, there are Azure Architecture documentation available. Now, let's say being a solution architect, you required certain design available so that you can create a blueprint on which your organization can bring certain set of the application or a certain set of the data center or the resources that you need. Now, when I saying resources, it can be your web application, it can be your databases, it can be your storage, it can n number of resources. If you are from the analytics, it can be data factory and the data bricks as well. Long story short, guys, over here we have ample amount of the architecture support available in terms of the Microsoft guides that we can use over here, and this is currently the URL that I'm going to target over here. Now you can see this is the Microsoft architecture guides available, right? Now, depending on your principle of well-designed application best practices as per your cloud application and what is your application design pattern, on the basis of that, you will be able to get the granular information related to all the services what you need over here. So whenever you are clicking on any particular architecture over here, what set of the resources that you required in the architecture. So currently, if you're looking right now over here, this is one of the architecture which is designed for the access control, that any organization will be having certain set of the employees whom you will be assigning the role, who will be managing what set of the responsibility, what kind of the roles that needs to be assigned. You have that particular architecture in place, and on the basis of that, you will be able to see the architecture diagram as well. So it will be easy to create any sort of the blueprint where you will be designing a Kubernetes cluster, where there will be a firewall in place, the traffic will be distributed in between, and there will be an Azure Bastion services. Now, whatever we are talking about over here, once you are done knowing the architecture, this will be created by a solution architect. Now, we require that level of the understanding that we can come up with the architecture design and we can compare this with the help of the best solution available or best solution suggested by Azure, and we can compare the things. If anything that we need to adopt from this particular diagram, we will be doing that. Or maybe certain business demand totally different requirement over here. So you can have a blueprint and you can optimize as per your business requirement over here. Now, that is just a high level understanding, guys. I'm not getting into the Kubernetes or any sort of the containerized application at the moment because that required certain amount of the understanding before we will get into those discussion. But for an understanding, guys, I'm showing you just right now an architecture of a web application deployment and how that will be connected securely with the databases and what all set of the resources that you need to deploy in order to create connectivity and secure that connectivity. So some of the examples are your firewall and the Azure Bastion. And in order to have your cloud to on-premises connectivity, there is an gateway that we need to deploy from Azure to your on-premises data center, how you would like to create your site-to-site connectivity. Now, why we looked into that particular picture? Because over here, guys, you required an application architecture requirements over here. You need to know your data center architecture, so you need an understanding for that. You also required a virtual data center requirement, a reference architecture to follow, your Azure building blocks, that what all things that you required over here. So what will be the architecting style? Because, guys, your web application can be hosted on a VM, it can be hosted on an app service, it can be hosted on a Kubernetes cluster, or it can be a containerized application running on a container instance, right? So there are a number of the options available. Similarly, for your databases, you can host your database inside a VM or a virtual machine. You can directly host a database, by using a platform as a service, or it can be a managed instances, or probably you can directly use a Cosmos DB within Azure itself. What are the cloud best practices over here we need to know, and design and review your checklist. Just like, guys, whenever you are planning to travel, right, you create your itinerary, right, that what are the places that you have to go, what are the things that you required. Let's say if I'm planning a trip for Norway, definitely I require some warm clothes to be packed up, right? Or if I'm planning some trip to UAE, maybe the packaging and the itinerary will be different. In the similar manner, when you are hosting a web application, your web application can be a banking firm web application, it can be a healthcare firm web application, probably it can be a government portal itself, which demand different level of the security over here. So accordingly, your architecture design will going to be different from one another. And what level of the performance that you required, what level of the connectivity that you required, probably you will be using a VPN gateway or the express route to connect on the on-premises. Within Azure, you can either use VPN gateway or a VNet peering options. Now, what are the things those requirement over here? We're going to discuss within training. But over here, just to give you a high level understanding that all these services that we need to understand, and depending on our architectural requirement, we need to place those services as per the design. So here we required Azure solutions for that, and you build your microservices architecture. Now when we say microservice architecture, we are talking about containers and the Kubernetes application. Now how it is different from a regular architecture, all sort of the discussion and the documentation and the guides are available over here. Now what are the Azure services that we need to know over here? So probably for an infrastructure service, we require to know the computational service, how the network connectivity will be created on top of it over here. So accordingly, we will have a virtual machine, a container, a blob storage required, or a virtual network load balancer, and how the DNS works. And then we required an understanding of a express route, traffic manager, VPN gateway, application gateway, and there are many more services like that. For the security management, Azure is providing your Azure Active Directory, where you can create users just like your on-premises AD servers, where we can install Active Directory domain services and we can promote a machine on a domain and we can create users on the on-premises. Over here, you don't need to go through all this pain. Here, you directly have a Azure Active Directory available, where you will be able to create users directly. So if I go inside this Azure Active Directory, you can see it does give me the option to create users over here. And here we don't need to wait to promote a machine on a domain. We don't need to even maintain that particular server, because this is something which is totally managed by Microsoft. And you can see over here that I have created multiple users over here. You can also create one on your choice of the domain. Now, how you will be able to do that? So we require an understanding of the Azure Active Directory. We need to understand how your Azure Active Directory is different from the on-premises, and what level of the authentication and the authorization will be needed. So on the on-premises, everything will be an object. You will be able to assign any sort of the rules on the basis of your GPO, that is your group policy management. And for the authentication and the authorization on the on-premises, we use Kerberos and the NTLM. On the other hand, on the cloud, the things that we will be accessing over the HTTP and HTTPS. Now over here, there are different set of the protocols that we deal with, like OpenID connection, OAuth. Now, we are not getting into much details at the moment, but for your understanding, there are certain differences that we have the way we will be using the Azure, and we need to understand how those mechanism functions over here. So there are things for the security guys that we need to understand over here. Probably your role-based access control, like owner, contributor, and reader roles that you will be giving. And then what level of the accessibility that you need to provide. So how you will be dealing with the permissions. And then there are certain security services available, like your Azure Key Vault, which can be used in order to keep your security information, probably a disk encryption key that you would like to keep, or maybe there is a test user account that you will have for checking whether the application you will be able to log in or not. So probably there will be credential management, your secrets, or you can have your certificate, just like your web application have a certificate over here. So even Azure will be using some certificates in order to protect your web application. You may require such kind of the certificates to be created within Azure, and how to store it within Azure over here. So we have to do certain level of the planning for the security requirement. For that, we need to understand the security management services which are available within Azure, and accordingly, how you will be able to integrate the other services. For an example, your content delivery network, just like your YouTube, Netflix, or just like your integration services that you can have over here that you can use for service bus or hybrid connectivity, or your analytical tool like Hadoop Insight, Data Factory, Stream Analytics. Now, this is something not everybody is working on the same field, guys. So there are people who will be working on the Internet of Things devices. They need to capture a lot of logs, and they need to do the Power BI integration. And they also need to work on the Hadoop Insight and the Databricks as well for big data analysis. For the people who are working on the people who are working mostly on analytics part. Now, further, you require your databases like your SQL databases, or how those resources will be integrated with one another, right? So we need to understand that particular architecture before we go ahead and implement any of the solutions. Because if you will be able to draw your solution as per your requirement, half of the problem is already solved. So if you can write down your problems correctly, you will be able to reach to the solution sooner. So while creating the architecture diagram, you will be able to understand what could have been the possible challenge that you will be able to face during the implementation, and accordingly you will be able to conquer those problems and you will be able to get to the right solution. So that's the key over here. And then you require a compute solution, web application, mobile application, and how we will be able to develop. Now what your developer will be working upon, so what are the areas that you need to involve your development team? So that is also we need to understand where we can take the assistance from the development or where we require those services to be implemented over here. And then you need to know about your hybrid solution. Now, when you are saying hybrid solution, we are talking about integrating your on-premises resources. Probably what if I have created 100 users on the on-premises? You may need to migrate those users from the on-premises to the cloud. So how to bring those users using AD Connect, how those AD Connect, that is your Active Directory connection services, will be working, how you will be able to sync those users, we're going to discuss all in the part of the training. Now, guys, I hope you are getting some level of the understanding that if some organization need to deploy their solution, what all the areas they need to look into before they are building their any of the solution over here. Now, taking an example of a multi-tier HA and a web application services and the plan security. Now, here we're going to discuss that how a web application can be hosted. Now, if it is not been hosted on a VM, what are my choices? So we're going to talk about the app service plan, which is the another way of hosting a web application. And once we are done with that particular discussion, we would be discussing what kind of the security that we need if we will be using an app service plan. You all have heard about platform as a service, right? Somewhere near about, let's say, there are many options available that we can use platform as a service resources. Now, what exactly it means talking about the platform as a service, right? So currently, guys, what we are looking at right now, it's a multi-tier HA, that is your high availability and your disaster recovery, right? So over here, you can see there is a primary region and there is a secondary region. Now, here, whenever the user will be accessing any of your web applications, so where you have hosted a web application, so if you see this particular picture, we have hosted a web application on a VM. So this is one of the legacy model, what we are looking at the moment over here. Now, guys, few minutes ago, we have discussed that in order to increase the high availability, we need to distribute the traffic to more than one resources in different data centers, right? So over here, guys, if you see that a web application, a website, if whomsoever is creating, right, that web application need to be accessed by hundreds of the customers. So where the customers are, the traffic is coming through the internet. Let's say if I need to browse a website, we all will be opening a browser and we are hitting on the URL. Now that particular URL or that particular DNS belong to your traffic manager. Why? Because your traffic manager is one of the global service which is capable of distributing the traffic cross region. So if you are planning a DR, definitely your application sites should be running in more than one region. So let's say if one region goes down, another region will continue to handle the traffic over here. So that's where you are dealing with DR. It means disaster recovery. And you demand the similar set of the application in two different regions. So if you see that this is your primary region, and in your primary region, you can see there is a load balancer, which is maintaining the high availability of your web tier. Similarly, guys, your application have some dependency component, because it is not just a web application that you need, it is also there will be some dependency components that you required, probably for the queuing of the application, or maybe a supported set of the application which required your front end or a web tier application to function. And definitely, guys, that is also demanding high availability. So you have a load balancer which is also taking care of the high availability of the application, because we cannot afford a single point of failure in the architecture. So definitely you required more than one resources in availability zone or availability set. And here you can see there is another load balancer which is distributing the traffic to more than one databases over here. And over here, we need to continue monitoring these services. Now, definitely, if a user will be accessing your web application, you demand certain level of the security. Let's take an example of a Facebook application, guys. So being a customer, definitely you required some level of the authentication, right? So once you sign up for the Facebook, now later on when you're trying to log into the Facebook application, definitely it will ask for your credential. You can enable multi-factor authentication on that as well, that it will send a code to your mobile phone, just like a one-time password over there. Now, similarly, guys, if you are deploying any web application, so definitely it needed some level of the authentication mechanism. So for that, you have Azure Active Directory in place. And in order to troubleshoot, let's say if any of the application goes down, you also required a secure way to jump onto any of these web application to troubleshoot from the production environment. For that, you have a Bastion host, which is nothing but a jump server, which actually help you accessing these resources if in case there will be any troubleshooting or any action that needs to be taken over here. Long story short, this is one of the site that you will be having over here, which is functioning for your web application. Now, similarly, guys, if you would like to be available at a regional level outage, you demand the similar set of the resources in the another region. But your traffic need to be distributed through the traffic manager to both the regions. So just in case one region goes down, another region should be able to take the workload. And how these resources are connected, whenever there will be a database having some data over here that needs to be replicated, because we don't want, if there will be an outage happening, somebody who have booked any of the tickets of a flight over here, that's supposed to be reflected on the another site as well. So you demand replication of the data among these sites as well. Now replication is something also demands a connectivity. So over here you can see a virtual network connectivity is there. Now if currently you are looking over here, why we are calling it multi-tier HA over here, because here you can have web tier, business tier, and your third tier, that is your database tier. And over here you are meeting your high availability requirement on each and every tier over here. And we also have a DR solutioning available, that we are capable of distributing the traffic to more than one region. Guys, I hope this part is clear to everybody. Is it making sense to all of us, guys? Are we able to understand the architecture, guys? All of us? Can I get a quick confirmation from everybody? Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. Now, if you see further, guys, we're going to talk about a web application deployment. But in order to host a web application, we need to understand compute first. That what exactly that you demand. So over here, there will be a web app, and your web app have certain dependency component. For an example, if you're deploying a web application, there are certain videos and pictures that you would like to store, and you would like to bring them to access from the web application. So how you will be able to store, and your web application must be connected with the databases as well, and those database and your web application are connected with one another with the help of the connection string. So you need to store that particular connection string somewhere over here, and with the help of the graph API that you will have, you will be able to authenticate and authorize to that particular web application. So how that particular mechanism work, right? So first of all, we need to understand the app service plan, right? And where exactly the authentication and the authorization will be happening, and how this particular web application can be connected with any other dependency component over here. So in order to explain that particular section, guys, first of all, we need to understand what is infrastructure as a service. Now, guys, when we say infrastructure as a service, right? Accordingly, I will be explaining platform as a service. Now, when you say infra as a service, what all things that you required as a part of infra? So probably if I say, what is an infrastructure as a service? So some of your answers will be like a VM, a physical server. So over here, whenever you are using infrastructure as a service, what Azure is providing. Now, guys, I want all of you to think practically. Let's say what all things that you are currently using as an infra. So probably your laptop, right? Now, guys, your infra is divided into three sections over here. Now, what sections that we talk about over here? The first section is your compute. The second section is your storage. And the third section is your networking. right? These are the three things which form your infrastructure. Now let's go granular, guys. When you say compute, what are the things that you required to meet your computational need, right? So when you say a VM, a virtual machine, you required a vCore, a virtual core. So just like your laptop required AMD processors, Intel processors over here, definitely these VMs also required core for that, right? Now, apart from that, what you required your virtual CPU. So just like your CPU that you required over here, that is further, we also required a virtual CPU for a virtual machine. And what else we required? We required a RAM. And what it is actually helping us in order to get over here is IOPS, that is input and output per second over here. So input and output per second means that how much your machines are performing over here. So if I go to your VM section, right? So I'm in the Azure portal at the moment, and if I target any of your virtual machine, let's take an example, right? So how much compute you required in order to host a web application, right? So that requirement should be coming from the development side, that depending what level of the operating system that we are selecting over here. Let's say I'm using Windows Server 2016, and how much compute that it demands. So accordingly, guys, you have your machine sizes available. Let's say D series machine, M series machine over here, E series machine, and you will be able to select your location. So let's say I have selected that I would like to spin up a server in your East US location, and how much compute I required over here. So I'm selecting the size on the basis of the virtual CPU, RAM, and the data disk, and maximum input and output per second, what size of the machine that I would should go with to get certain amount of the performance over here. So how heavy your application, more will be the size of the VM. Now that is just an example from the infrastructure as a service aspect. Now in order to get the storage, definitely guys, we demand more disk. So if you're creating a virtual machine, it demand more disk over here. So similarly, guys, if I go into the disk section of the virtual machine, if I go into the disk, you do have an option available to use whether you would like to use a standard disk or the premium disk, depending what level of the performance you're looking for. And further, you can also attach more disk. So let's say if you demand more performance, so let's say I'm creating a resource group with the name 𝗏𝗏𝗏, where I'm going to keep this particular resource. And if I go into the disk section, okay, guys, it is keep on asking about this naming, guys. Let me say I'm using a name VM to this virtual machine over here. Now attaching a new disk, you can click over here and you can see, guys, it does give you the option to attach more disk. So let's say if you need to increase the storage capacity of your virtual machine, right? Maybe you are bringing certain set of the files which is required by your application, or maybe you are using that particular VM for the databases which demand more storage. So you can go for a certain level of the sizes as well over here. Now your networking, definitely guys, if you will be spinning up a machine, it requires certain IP address to be assigned, right? So just like your server have a network interface card where the IP address has been assigned, here as well, we also demand a NIC, that is network interface card, which will have that particular IP address assigned. And why we call it virtual machine? So just like your physical machine, if you need to install a virtualization, what you install a hypervisor or a VMware inside it, and that's where you spin up a machine on top of it. Now, what is the benefit? So guys, the benefit of your virtualization is nothing that you will be able to use your hardware up to the full potential. What does that mean? Just think practically, guys. Currently, I'm connected to this particular meeting with GoToWebinar, and I'm using an MS Paint, and I'm using a PowerPoint presentation over here. Guys, do you think I'm doing justice with my hardware? Am I using my hardware up to the full potential? Or guys, just think about your laptops. You all are connected to this particular training with the help of your laptop. Guys, are we utilizing the hardware up to the full potential, guys? What do you think? Guys, this is an open-ended question, guys. Are we all utilizing over here? Definitely not, right? We are not utilizing our hardware up to the full potential. If you go into your task manager at the moment and try to check that how much capacity that you are utilizing, definitely probably 20%, 25%, at max 30%. What about the rest 70% of your hardware capacity, guys? Think about an organization. Hundreds and thousands of the laptop has been given to the employees. There are hundreds and thousands of the servers are available, and none of the servers are getting utilized up to the full potential. Can I say it's a bad investment, guys? If you are not utilizing the hardware up to the full potential, you have something, but you are not utilizing up to the fullest, but you are paying for the fullest, right? So it's a bad investment. So in order to come out from that particular situation, we have virtualized that particular server. Is it making sense to all of us, guys? Are we all able to follow this? Everybody? Especially people who are from the beginner level? Are we all able to follow, guys? Can I get a quick confirmation from everybody? If is it making sense? Okay. So guys, when you talk about virtualization, virtualization is nothing that on a physical server, we can install a hypervisor, and on top of it, we can spin up multiple virtual machine. So what happens whenever you are using multiple virtual machine? Definitely the hardware that you are using over here, inside this hardware you can allocate. Let's say this big server have a 16 GB RAM and I'm not utilizing it up to the fullest. I can spin up a virtual machine and I can assign 4 GB RAM to the individual virtual machine just to ensure that my hardware should be utilized up to the full potential. In the same manner, your provider is using a Hyper-V so that we will be able to get to the virtual machine in a less price. So if your provider is getting benefit that the provider is able to use your hardware up to the full potential, definitely guys, your VM will be available in a economical prices over here. Now, that is the understanding of your infrastructure as a service. Now guys, let me ask you this particular question once again. Let's say guys, if you're deploying a hardware, definitely you required an up and running operating system which required a licensing cost. If you are developing a web application, right? Let's say if you are developing a PHP web application, a Java based web application, or a .NET based web application, definitely you required that framework. Like if you are using a .NET based web application, you required Visual Studio. If you are creating a Java based application, you required Eclipse framework. If you are creating a .NET based application, you required 𝗤𝗙𝗙𝗘𝗙 framework. If you are creating a .NET based application, you required 𝗤𝗙𝗙𝗘𝗙 framework. If you are creating a .NET based application, you required connect. If in case you demand any further security like your SSL and your TLS version, that is your transport layer security you would like to enable, or any SSL certificate, just like your web application demands over here, you do have an option available to select your protocol, and you do have an option available to upload those certificates as well. And you can directly upload those security and the SSL certificate for the security requirement. If you like to have a network level security, you can also connect this particular web application with a particular network over here. Now, let's say if that particular network is available within Azure or available on the on-premises, you can also create connectivity of this particular web application with cloud and to your on-premises networking requirement. You can see over here, guys, it does give you an option to select your Azure network if you have created any, or if you would like to create a connectivity from the on-premises, it does have the hybrid option as well. So you can select your networking option and you can integrate with your on-premises requirement as well that you will be able to select. So over here, let's say I'm going with your hybrid connection, and in your hybrid connection, I would like to add this particular hybrid connection over here. You can click on create hybrid connection. You can give a name over here, my hybrid connection, and further you will be able to select any of your network which are available to the on-premises or any cross-cloud platform as well. So you do have the choices available to make it further secure. So over here, guys, you can integrate with other cloud services as well. Let's say you would like to take a backup and you would like to take the over here, let's say I would like to configure a backup requirement. So you can click on the backup, and within the backup, you will be able to integrate to your storage account as well. So you do have an option available, guys, that you will be able to integrate this particular backup. You can store the backup inside a particular storage account. You can schedule a backup as well. Let's say I would like to create a backup every day, or let's say probably every 4 hours, I would like to create a backup for the application. Or in case I would like to create an authentication mechanism through my Facebook account or through the Azure Active Directory, so that you do have the option available that you can include your identity provider. Either you can allow your users to sign in from your Microsoft account or through the Apple account, through the Facebook account, and you can also integrate to your Azure AD as well. So over here, guys, the picture that we are looking over here, that it can help you creating your DNS. You can take a backup inside your storage account, and you can create connectivity with your SQL database as well. And it does support your single sign-on for your web application as well. So just like a user will be logging into any of the application, you does have the Azure Active Directory that you can integrate, where the user can log in with the help of your Azure Active Directory to access multiple other applications. So you do have the single sign-on capability, that the same username and the password that you are using to in for signing the multiple applications over here. So Microsoft Cloud Security will be available, guys, that you have data retention that you can use. You can use your app connectors, your cloud app catalogs, your cloud discovery options available, and you can also enrich your applications by assigning Office 365 licenses, and you can enhance the capability of a user to access more than one application over here. So far, guys, I have given you an high-level understanding and some level of the understanding related to your infrastructure as a service and your platform as a service and your single sign-on for the AD authentication and what are the other services available. Now, guys, I'm going to talk about what is your Azure certification roadmap. Now, over here, whenever you will be using your Azure certification roadmap, you will have your fundamentals, associate, and your expert certifications, so that you will be able to use it for AZ900, guys. So, guys, if you feel that you are very new and you have no understanding related to the cloud at all, or you are not having a technical background, you can go for Azure Fundamental, which is an optional certification, and you can get some familiarity associated with your cloud services or Azure services. AZ104 is one of the prerequisite that you can say. Let's say I would like to go for the architect level course later on, or maybe a DevOps, but let's say I would like to have some understanding on the infrastructure side, that what all components that we will be having and how to implement. And then with the help of that, you can pick any of the certification examination that you would like to prefer on a later stage, like your Azure Solution Architect or your Azure DevOps. So currently, we are going to conduct for the Azure Solution Architect. That is something that you can look into. And over here, it will give you an understanding that how the services will be implemented and what all things that we need to accomplish in order to deploy any particular solution over here. So as mentioned, guys, design for the candidates looking for the demonstrate fundamental knowledge, and your administrator is for implementation, monitoring, compute and storage and network security over here. And designing includes the integration of all these components that you have learned to implement over here. Now, demo of the web application, guys, I have just shown you over here where I have created a web application, and that particular web application have multiple choices available to connect with your databases and have this integration capability for the monitoring services as well. So that I can just show you right now, because we just created a web application, and if you will be looking for some of the monitoring capability, you do have the application insight option available, which does give you the insight of the monitoring related to your web application, that if you will be running any particular application over here. So if in case you would like to track the availability, or if you would like to look for the failure or the